Hello and welcome back to Family Law and More. I'm your host, Isabel Hawkins. And we also have today Liana Chan. We're both consultant barristers here at Unit Chambers, and we're very happy to welcome Afrah Qassim today, who is the founder and CEO of Savera UK. They are a charity who work with survivors of honour-based abuse. And Afrah's here today to talk to us a little bit about what the charity do, specifically in a family law context, and also to give us some more information about honour-based abuse and how that presents, so that we can have that information moving forward as family law professionals. So, Afrah, would you like to just tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about the charity?
Yes, thanks, Isabella. So my name's Afrah Qassim, and I'm the founder and CEO of Savera UK, which is a Merseyside-based national charity. Its work is to end honour-based abuse and harmful practices. So my background is I've worked majority of my life in the NHS in terms of inequalities and mental health, and that is probably one of the reasons we established the organisation in 2010 is because of the work that I've done around community engagement at the same time as engaging with professionals to understand the gap of the issue of honour-based abuse and harmful practices in terms of community engagement, in terms of the gaps, in terms of accessing services, in terms of the challenges and how they being perceived around those issues. And then the professionals see it as they has some fears of challenging those perceptions because they might be seen as discrimination, or they don't have the right knowledge and experience to deal with cases of honour-based abuse and harmful practices, and also not knowing how to spot the signs. So our work is to try, and we wanted to make a difference, make the change, and that's the reason we started with a small group setting in to look at the genetic first domestic abuse within Black and minority communities, and then through our work we developed, and then in 2018 where we rebranded and specialised specifically on honour-based abuse and harmful practices. So that's how we kind of the establish of the organisation. Now Savera UK has a specialist service around those issues. We have a number of elements. One of them is around working to support those who's at risk or provide a direct intervention to anybody who's at risk of honour-based abuse. So our service works, even though when we established the organisation was specifically around women and young women, but then we rebranded and we felt there is a need for these issues to help anybody who's at risk regardless of their age, gender, sexuality, religious or background. Anybody can access as long as the criteria is their risk is honour-based abuse and harmful practices. That's one element where we provide direct intervention, safeguarding, advocacy, practical intervention, and then we have another element in terms of campaign and trying to change policy and work with other sectors to change some policies and working with the government to change in terms of those issues, but also community engagement, training, and also raising awareness and campaign to try and do as much as it says to really hopefully. Our vision is a world without honour-based abuse. Our mission is to eliminate honour-based abuse and harmful practices for good. So that's how it is. We're national, as I mentioned, but our direct intervention, where it's directly with those who's at risk, is commission-based. So at the moment, we provide that face-to-face around Merseyside and Cheshire, whereas our helpline is national.
Thanks, Afrah. That was really helpful. In terms of looking at your website, and obviously when you've just given us that summary of what Savera UK is all about, you mentioned, of course, the term honour-based abuse and also harmful practices. Are you able to just expand, first of all, on what we mean by honour-based abuse and how that is different from other forms of domestic abuse?
Yeah, definitely. So when we talk about honor-based abuse is a crime or an incident which involve violence, threat of violence, intimidation, coercive controls, or abuse, and that include physical, psychological, emotional, sexual, financial, which has or may have been committed to protect or defend the honour in brackets within individual, family or and community, all alleged or perceive that the individual, that the person has breached what they can consider their family's code of behaviour or values or belief that they feel that they're breached, and then they think that there is some consequences as a result to that.
And in terms of how that person, I suppose, defines or perceives that as honour-based abuse, would that be in terms of the information that is brought to you and to us as practitioners when we meet, for example, our clients, would they be saying, I've suffered X, or I've been subjected to X, whether it's coercive control, financial abuse, because of it's honour-based? Do they have to be specific about that? Because obviously, and I ask the question because obviously we have a lot of our cases involve domestic abuse or allegations of domestic abuse, and they say, there's coercive controlling behaviour. But how do you determine that it's specifically honour-based?
Yeah, so I think honour-based is within the umbrella of domestic abuse, as we kind of see and consider. I think the difference between domestic abuse and honour-based abuse is the behaviour that being taken on. It's because it's the protection of the family or protection kind of being done as to protect the individual or the family or the community that perceive that that individual has breached or shamed the family or the community, and the consequences can happen. And that's so as part of that they could be forced into a marriage, they could be being taken into in prison within the home, not allowed to go out, not allowed to mix. And some of the example of breaching the values or that behaviour could be as simple as within that individual or within that family where they don't believe that particularly female kind of meeting or speaking to their friends who's a male within the school or within college. That could be one example, or dressed in a way that the family does not agree,
Yes.
or believe that the dress code that they've dress is within the family's values. So sometimes they may call them, oh, you've been becoming westernized. Yeah. So one area they will force them into a marriage, that kind of a perception. Or another area is we've had some cases where a young woman who really wanted to be a singer, but her family believe that behaviour is creating disrespect to the family and within the community, and doesn't think that is a career-wise for that. And they think that there was a bad spiritual in her head that telling her that. Yes. So they kind of did a number of abusive practices to try and think and to change her behaviour, thinking that she cannot be that, and that could be as said. So there's a range of excuses that being used to justify or believe that it's a justification of those behaviour. But also in another way as well, many who may as well consider those as they doing it as a protective measures to their families. So they thinking, by doing this is to give a better life to that person or better protection to that individual. They might not really do it as a malicious or they're seen as an abusive. It's just part of that generation practices that been there for years without being questions as well. And that's why we feel it's so important to engage with communities and really challenge those perception and those behaviours, but at the same time kind of celebrate the cultural beauty within our culture and our identity, and kind of picking those behaviour that bring only harm and bring abuse into that individual.
Thank you. And just in respect of harmful practices, I was looking at the education hub on your website. It was really useful and very informative. And there were a couple of videos on that. And I was looking at the different types of harmful practices that there are. And for me, the most obvious one that I'm aware of is FGM. But I also read that there's something called breast ironing or breast flattening. And show my ignorance here, I had never come across that as a harmful practice. And there's also what's called virginity testing or hymenoplasty. Yeah. Are you able to elaborate on those and any other additional sort of harmful practices? I think that I came across conversion therapy. Are you able to just expand on those types of practices?
Yeah, I mean, there is range, and these are just some of the example of harmful practices and abuse. And if we're just looking at breast ironing, the family who practices such practice, they think that they actually protecting the child, because say for example a 9-year-old who they started to show kind of that womanhood, and the family wanted to protect it, wanted to continue with their studies, also that she doesn't bring attention to what they call the male kind of attention. So that's how they done it, but they don't seem to see the harm of the rest of the life. So it's so in terms of that. So how it's done is they might use a banding material to band so that the breast doesn't grow, or they might use the type of hot stone or a hot iron to try kind of bind the breast. And then as I said, they're doing it in a way of a protection rather than an abuse, but it is a harmful practice and should never be practiced at all. In terms of conversion therapy, it's a wide aspect of those where they believe that somebody who's been identified as a LGBTQ+, or they kind of seen as having an illness, so through conversion therapy that they can kind of cure them from their sexuality or from identified as LGBT+. Yeah, so that's those kind of the area in terms of that. And then around virginity testing is some families, or some within particular families, where they believe there's no sex before marriage. So they wanted to kind of test if the young woman is still a virgin. And so that can be either by somebody within the family who will use a mean to test how they are, or they can go to used to be a professional before 2023, that was still illegal in the UK, and it only became a legal practice in 2023. So it's only recent that the law has changed. Yeah. So before was okay for
That's quite shocking.
Yeah, exactly.
And Afrah, would I be right to think that a lot of these harmful practices and a lot of this abuse is disproportionately aimed at women and girls?
Yes, definitely. So as I said, when we set up our organisation at the beginning, it was specifically for women and girls. But then when we rebranded, we wanted it to be across gender, but the majority are still female and young women as well. And as an organisation, we try to expand and break the stereotypical of these practices, because it can happen to any group, to any background, to any culture, but there is within some are more prevalent than others. So this can be across communities as well,
because
including white British.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say, because it's an interesting conversation, isn't it? Because in any culture, if you're doing something that's seen to not align with that culture or not align with the values that are most prevalent within that culture, and you're subjected to abuse or harmful practices as a result, then that of course fits the definition, doesn't it? But we don't see it. We don't see it referred to as that in a lot of Western cultures, when I have no doubt that it is happening, perhaps not on the same scale. And I think that probably feeds into the stereotypes that these harmful practices only affect certain communities. And then with that comes the fear from a lot of professionals or from the media about speaking out against these practices, because it may be thought that you don't want to offend a certain culture, don't want to cause upset. We have to respect other people's cultures. And that's a conflict, isn't it, that you probably see quite a lot, do you?
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think it's really, and that's where, as an organization, where we are trying to really break those myths and those stereotypes, we're really keen to kind of bring other of what could consider as honor. So as we said, that's why we really wanted to bring that conversion therapy, because it is widely practiced, and we've seen people from the white British background who have issues around those, but also in terms of how it's seen. But historically, part of our training, what we look is historically how these some of those issues. So if we look at female genital mutilation in the 18th century, there is somebody called Dr. Isaac Brown who opened a clinic in London for female genital mutilation, which is part of curing hysteria for women. And that is in here in the UK, and there is other as well. So historically these are happen here as well, and similar to some other issues. It's just like we have moved on from them. And if we look at domestic abuse was a very normal thing in the UK. And there we have moved on. It's still a high aspect of statistic that we see within domestic abuse. So honor-based abuse is no different. It's just we haven't talked about it much. It's been seen as a very stereotype to a particular group or a particular belief, so people does not want to touch it. As an organization, we're trying to really break those myths and those aspects and see the different leg that can look into those. So for example, I just want to give you one example in terms of, I was speaking to somebody who's from a white background, who's Scouser, born and lived in here. She's in a relationship with her boyfriend, and he really pressurizing her and wanted to buy a house together or move together. But her mum is very much Christian, believe marriage, no sexual relationship before marriage. She really and even when her boyfriend comes, they sleep in a different rooms to respect him. And then it's only because I was explaining to her what my area of work was, and then she realized, she said, well, I think I could be under honor-based abuse because I'm getting pressure from my boyfriend and my friends to say, we're in the 20th century, you should be able to do whatever you want. But she's respecting her mother and respecting, feel like if she dishonored her mother and just did whatever she wanted, then her mum might disown her or might not kind of speak to her, and she was in that dilemma. And also it's how far within that, how far do you go in terms of that? They might disown her, but in some family, when we talk to particularly those who believe in honor-based abuse at the extremist level, is they will do whatever mean to protect that family, and that where honor killing it comes in. So honor-based abuse, it's how extreme it is. It could be something very low in terms, you disrespect me, go away, I don't want to know you anymore, or somewhere where they would go, and where we had one where we had to move about 6 times because the family hired a private investigator to try and find whereabout they are. So I think in terms of the level of it can be at different level. And also the difference between honor-based abuse and harmful practice is the domestic abuse, there is one perpetrator who then the whole family will work with that person who's at risk to support them in whatever mean. Whereas the honor-based abuse is there is multiple perpetrator, and that could be the family, extended family, as well as the community. So trying to protect that individual, they become so isolated from everybody. So when they are really finally, and majority when we started this work, majority of those who flee is between life and death.
Because what you see is the support net. Well, what we would assume is your support network, if you're suffering abuse, and who you might naturally turn to for support and help, can actually be the people who are causing the harm and the abuse.
Yeah. And the people who love you most.
That must be so hard.
When they go and seek help, the wider organization who hasn't got knowledge around those issues, they don't see that. They're thinking, how can a family do that to theirs? And how, and if you don't have that understanding and that knowledge, and they become, it's their issue, not my issue. And instead, when we started the work of Savera UK over 15 years ago, nobody really wanted to listen, and the majority of them kind of very much stereotyped that this issue only happened within South Asian communities, so we don't have that population here in the city, so why are you bothering with it? And because I come from an Arab background and a Yemeni background, I knew that these issues happen in my community, so how can they say that? And I was like, no, you're really wrong. And it's only by starting to combat that. And then there was a case where we started where a 16-year-old young woman who was at risk, and the school contacted me for help because they didn't know how to do with it, because social services, when they got involved, the first thing they wanted was a consent from the parents, even though they're the perpetrators. So we kind of challenged, and this is a 16-year-old who was going to marry somebody who's double her age. And the reason for that was the uncle was owning some debt to somebody. So by subjecting his niece to marry into this family is so they can pay his debt.
One of the principles, isn't it, Afrah, of professionals who work in this field is to use the one chance rule, which my understanding is that when someone tells you that they're at risk or describes these risk factors, you take them seriously, because you may only have one chance to save them or to get them to safety. And if you don't, and if professionals just sort of dismiss it as, oh, that's just, how things are in that community, or, oh, it can't be that bad, how can their family do that? They haven't abandoned her, they're still with her, it'll resolve itself. I'm not going to get involved. And then the opportunity may be lost, and the consequences could be deadly.
Yeah, and that's where we come a number of times where we try and we work around that one chance rule. And as said, if you miss that one chance rule, that's it, a life can't be lost. And we have seen that, and we've challenged many where we sit around safeguarding in terms of ensuring that that one chance rule does not miss, because if you do, you will miss that individual. I'll tell you with a case which kind of linked to the family law. It was when we when we started, family law wasn't really equipped around those issues. She was 15 years old. She was always accompanied by a family member within her family, even when they just moved to the UK, and she was going to college to learn English, and I think she was 15 or 16, can't remember the exact age, but definitely under 18. And she became pregnant. So she was feeling not well, and the mother took her to the doctor. The doctor checked her and said, I think your daughter, she's pregnant. She said, she can't be my culture. We don't. That is something, she's underage. She's never been with anybody. She's always within the family. I need a second opinion. Took her to the hospital. They did check, and they confirmed that she is pregnant. I mean, as a parent, my first thought is what happened to my daughter? What's happening? Their first priority was, this young girl has been promised to her cousin. The most priority is to mend her hymen, because she's been married, the minute she turned 18, she'll be marrying her cousin. And if they identify that she's not a virgin, then there will be like shame and all that caused to the family. There was no consideration of what happened to to the child, how can she become pregnant? Who's there any? I mean, we knew what was the outcome and what the reason, that it's a cause of rape in the family, and we were trying to get her out, and we took it all the way to the family court to remove her. Sadly, we went all the way to the judge, and then the judge dismissed the things because he really didn't understand the protection or didn't understand around honor-based abuse. And at that time, I don't know who was the judge in there, but we did an event following that, and we used that as a case study. And I don't know if you had at that time the Judge Dahas. I don't know if you were. I think she's retired. She was in that audience, and she heard the story, and she already learned about the issues of honor-based abuse, and she actually took an action from that, where she organised like training for the family courts to really raise a better understanding for barristers as well as for judges, and it was a great achievement in that. And I think that's really needed, and it should continue to need it on a regular basis, not just a one-off. And as that one chance, sadly, as I said, that young person, we never really. I following that case, I don't know where what happened to them. Yeah,
was that marriage due to be a forced marriage, or was it just an arranged marriage, or you're not sure?
Yeah, she would have been forced into a marriage. So yeah, it's definitely a forced marriage. But she was being raped by family members. But that consideration to the family was not considered. All they were worried about is to amend the hymen, because she's been promised to this family member, and they needed her to be a virgin.
And of course, we have now forced marriage protection orders. We have FGM protection orders. In your work, do you come across those in practice much? Do you support survivors and clients to go and get those orders?
On a daily basis. So we will sit on safeguarding meetings. So when there is, a lot of the time, sometimes, particularly when it comes to where it's been disagreed that these protections shouldn't have because they haven't met the threshold. And we keep saying, no, it does meet the threshold. So there is at times where that might be a challenge, and we have to kind of face those challenges to try and make sure that these protection orders are being put in place. And there is a time, it depends if they are over 16 and we are able to guide them, then we will take that ourselves, as long as the consent of that individual to have a consent and they want that for themselves. But because of, if it's restriction to social services, we have to work with social services. But if it's an adult, we work with a number of law firms that will help us and guide us in terms of taking out those protection orders.
How challenging do you find them in terms of pulling together the evidence for such applications for these orders? Because I imagine the victim will be very scared of the situation that they face and may be very reluctant to speak about their experiences. So for the purposes of evidencing the abuse, what support do you provide to those victims to help them within that process?
We really went around protection it, so we kind of balance what the risks are and how we ensure that there is weigh the risk of what would happen if we take in the protection orders and what would happen if we don't, and making sure that that person is protected. So if they remaining within their family home, if it's a 17-year-old and we're thinking, is it better to work with that individual and make sure that all the safety places are in place without having to put the protection order, but then it's when it would be the right time to get that protection order, or if we consider that there will be a risk and we have to take that, then we will use that. If they're underage, I think, and we as a multi-agency work together and then we come with the right action to protect that individual. We wouldn't go and take it ourselves on our own. It is a multi-agency kind of decision and how we work, particularly if they're children as well. And then we will work with the individual and kind of put everything in place.
Yes.
But we'll always weigh every risk that could happen if we're taking it or if we're not taking it, and what would that look like as well is so important.
And in your experience, Afrah, when working with other professionals to assist the victim, whether it's social workers or family law practitioners like ourselves, how informed are we or those professionals in your experience in respect of honour-based abuse and harmful practices? In your experience, are we well informed? Is there?
If it's from the beginning when I started this work, there's a lot of, literally none, I would say. I think we have moved quite a lot in the last 15 years. And I think it's more out there. These issues are more out there. There's more talking about them. There's people are more interested and keen to learn. But there is still a long way to go.
How do you, and we've touched upon this, Afrah, but how do you actually become involved? So there are multiple ways that you would become involved in family law proceedings. Could an individual approach you directly?
I think if they're a client of ours, so sometimes we'll write a letter of support to help and recognise kind of that this person is with us and they can support us. So we write that to a letter of support. We've been asked sometimes to kind of answer some questions around what support that the person has or give evidence. We wouldn't consider ourselves as an expert witness, but more of a professional witness in terms of supporting our client. But we will go with our client to the hearing if that needed. So whatever need that our client needed, that we will be kind of help and support with it within that. But also just to go back in terms of how the law works and the guidance, just to let you know, currently I know we don't have a clear definition of honour-based abuse and harmful practices.
No.
And that is really also another factor why sometimes it's a bit challenging of how to mainly record. And so as a sector, there is within our organisation that lead around those issues is we have been campaigning for the last number of years to the government to try and implement a clear definition for honour-based abuse. And hopefully if we have that definition, we'll be able to have some clear guidance and to support the likes of family law how to deal with this, but also will give us a better response, a better recording, a better data. At the moment the data is very much lacking in terms of collections. So in terms of that, because honour-based abuse can fall under different categories of crime. So I think that's the one missing, that we are hoping that through our campaign that we will reach that at some point to give a clear understanding of the offences that under honour-based abuse.
Thank you, Afrah. And just in terms of us as family law practitioners, so a person comes to us seeking advice. They say they're the victim of honour-based abuse or harmful practices. In your experience, what are the signs that we should be looking out for in terms of how we move that forward for our client in better at giving them advice, in ensuring that they're properly advised and fully advised, and then in terms of how we progress that on their behalf? They say, we've been subjected to violent behaviour because I've been wearing the wrong clothes and I've been told by my parent it's brought shame on the family. As practitioners, how do we best approach those types of cases in your view?
Yeah, I think it's different, varies, because sometimes even the person who's at risk might even not know that they are actually at risk of honour-based abuse and harmful practices, because many of them that come to us, they think they just done something against their family belief or family culture. That's how they see it. I think it's how we ask the right questions to really help us clarify what are they at risk of and who's are they at risk of, in terms of, being really the active listener and ask more questions to really get the bigger picture in terms of who's are the person that are really making those decisions for them, who's the person or the people that they are threatened by, and how far would that risk would go. Is it like literally between life and death and mutant kind of mutant? If I go back there, then you would never see me again, or is it what's this kind of the right thing to do? And they're the one who will be able to really tell us what the extent of their risk and what is the right question. That for us is like, as I said, is how safe are you? What's the level of risk it is from who's making those risks? What would the worst case scenario be for you in terms of those risks? So those kind of things that to help us understand what that picture. And as I said, being able to even just be open and honest and say, I might not understand about the culture that you come from or the family background or the belief that you have, but tell me how best can I help you and how best can we, because I think if we make them that central and give them the voice and we say we're here to listen, then I think that rather than making the assumption, I think quite a lot of the time we make the assumption they're from a certain group or certain background. We think, oh, they need that, or that's what's going to happen, because even if you come from the same family, the needs are very different, because one family may very much extremely behave and believe in those, whereas another family member would actually against it.
Yeah, so it's not no one size fits all, it's very much case specific.
Case by case,
yes. Yeah. Afrah, do you ever support the clients to attend meetings with lawyers, solicitors, barristers? And I ask a question, it goes back to what we covered earlier about it can be very difficult for a victim to talk about their experiences. And sometimes, certainly mine and Isabel's practice, quite often when we have conferences with clients or pre-hearing discussions even before court, the party we're representing can quite often be supported by a family member. And a lot of the time that family member will say, oh, I'm here to provide emotional support. And that party will say, yes, I'm happy for, mum or whoever to stay in the conference room with me. It's not always helpful, but I mean, how do we get around that? Or have, at the point the victim approaches us as lawyers, I imagine you as a support service and maybe the social care or the professionals have already stepped in perhaps to support and assist the client. Have you ever attended those types of conferences with lawyers to provide that support?
It's also case by case. It depends if we feel that there is and if they ask and we're able to, because we are also a very, very small team. So for us, if I have 2 staff and then having to go with the clients and then not able to deal with the others, it's but where we can, yes, we will do, and we will be able to. And I think that's where maybe some of the gaps for the family laws in terms of kind of representation, finding somebody where that will be able to support. I don't really support when you as a lawyer kind of seen with a family member, because we don't know what that family member is there for. Is it actually they are supported or actually there to stop the person from being open and honest of their risk as well? So I always kind of say, if you're going to see that person, always see them on their own. Even if they don't speak the language, you need to provide that kind of, because you just never know what that individual, and even I think even sometimes interpreter, we use them with caution, because if that person's actually supportive of those practices, they can easily threat the individual.
And I've actually kind of come across something similar on one of my cases. I felt that the interpreter, who came from the same community as my client, had seriously overstepped and almost started giving my client advice. And I had to step in and say, hold on a minute, with respect, you're here to interpret what I'm saying and nothing more.
Yeah.
Because you build a rapport with these people. But he was almost saying, oh no, in our culture, but also in our religion, we put things to one side for the sake of, the family staying together.
Excusing the behaviour in a
basically
way because
saying,
it's part of...
ignore the domestic abuse, ignore the bad behaviour. It's on you to put that to one side for the benefit of your children and for the benefit of your family. So massively overstepped and was quite shocking, really.
And that's where we said to you, the community play a huge part. So for example, the one I told you that we moved them for a number of time is they were kind of finding whereabouts them is through somebody who linked them through following their car registration through the DLA, because somebody within that organisation or that is, they were able to find out where they are. Another aspect is like we sometimes, where there is somebody who might work within health, we have to lock those health record because we knew that they can identify where they are through their health record. So we've dealt with those. So regardless of, we've dealt with people who are perpetrators where they are within health professional, within the justice professionals, education, for instance, from across. So I think people think that on-base abuse only being provoked or practiced by those who within poverty or those who's not educated. It's not. It's across
all levels.
It's all levels.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so cautious in terms of who deal with those cases.
So Afrah, in your view, how can we raise awareness? How can we all be more informed, other than of course listening to our podcast? But how would you suggest we need to raise awareness? Do you, as Savera UK, are there campaigns that you run on a regular basis? Are there events that raise awareness of this type of abuse and harmful practices?
Yeah, so definitely we, as I mentioned earlier, one aspect of us is around delivering training, planning campaign, doing awareness raising. And as I said, in terms of, I had done some training to the family law court within that a number of years ago, but I really would like to do even more around those. So definitely that kind of partnership is really, really important to engage with the justice system and see how we can kind of improve when somebody who's going through that challenging time, how can they smooth the way for them and not stressing them more than what they already are, and then kind of working together in terms of that. But also if there is any issue, please, they can contact us and we can kind of advise and guide. We have our helpline if anybody not sure can come and do that, refer to us or being able to kind of share those experiences.
Oh, well, thank you so much,
Afrah,
for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to join Isabel and I in this podcast episode. It's been hugely insightful and it's been a pleasure to talk to you today. And to our listeners, if you have enjoyed this episode, then please like and subscribe and share this episode with other colleagues and friends. And just in terms of accessing support, Savera UK does have a website and there's a wealth of information on there for professionals. And there's also the National Domestic Abuse Helpline as well as lots of other resources online. So thank you Isabel, and thank you Afrah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you both. That was super interesting.
In the next episode of Family Law and More, we discuss Roma and traveller families in the family courts, challenges, misconceptions and justice. The Roma and traveller communities in the UK have faced historic discrimination, systemic barriers and deep-rooted misconceptions within the family justice system. Despite legal protections, many families continue to encounter prejudices, lack of cultural understanding and disproportionate interventions. In this episode, we explore the unique challenges faced by Roma and traveller families in family law cases, the role of cultural misunderstanding and bias in social work and legal proceedings, how domestic abuse support and safeguarding differ in these communities, the impact of care proceedings and child protection interventions, and what family law professionals can do to ensure fairer outcomes.